Spanning the globe to bring you the constant variety of art. It's the Tenant Podcast. I'm Todd Pearson, coming to you from the 40 West Arts District here in Lakewood, Colorado. And joining me from his studio in Rapid City, South Dakota, my partner and my friend. You know him as quite possibly the most interesting man in the world, Wes Brown.
Hey, Todd, how you doing, my friend? Oh, my God. And this is the first episode in my new basement studio. So we're deep in the bowels of Rapid City. So if that tells you anything.
It's like your underground bunker, right?
It is.
Your podcast bunker.
That's right. So
well, it's good to see you, man. Super excited for today. Before we get started, I want to thank you for joining us. Remember, you can always find out what we're up to via our social media on Instagram at Tenant Podcast, our Tenant Podcast Facebook page, and of course, our website, tenantpodcast.com. We're wrapping up our theme of photography for the month of March, and we're ecstatic and honored to talk with our next guest. He's an extraordinary photographer, pushing the envelope with his imagery from abstract to still life and portraits. You can experience his work at his website, edwardmapplethorpe.com. Welcome to the program, Edward Mapplethorpe. Edward, how are you?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. Sort of an overcast day here in Weston, Connecticut. That's where I've lived with my wife and 8-year-old child for the last about 5.5 years. But I'm happy to join you. Happy to talk to you and about my work.
Fantastic. You said you've lived there for 5 years in Weston, Connecticut?
About 5.5 years, yeah. I'm a proud native New Yorker. I was born and raised in Queens, the suburb of Queens, and spent my whole adult life in Manhattan until about 5.5 years ago. So I was in my latter part of my 50s when I came out here, and I'm grateful to have lived in New York when I did and experienced what I did, but I'm more than happy to be out here right now. We have a beautiful property on 2.5 acres of land. And it's a great place to raise my child. And it's where I live now and do my work.
That's got to be a huge
really nice
change coming from Manhattan.
Yeah, it's a huge change. But, like I said, I lived a great life in Manhattan, and I really pushed it to the boundaries, and I took full advantage of it. But Manhattan, like I think most people know, it's changed a lot. And, the soul of the city, for me, has sort of been sort of sidelined and not there anymore. So, it was time. It was certainly time.
And you're a new father. Your son, Harrison, is that correct?
Right. Harrison he's going to be 9 in September. In relation to working and living a life in New York, I certainly postponed making the commitment to getting married and having a child much later. In hindsight, I wish perhaps I had started earlier. It would be nice for Harrison to have a little brother or sister, but you can't change history, and this is the way things are. But I'm very, very excited and proud and honored to have the experience of fatherhood. There was certainly a good chance that I wouldn't have that experience, but now that I do, I realize what I would have been missing. So here we are.
It's my experience. I had kids when I was pretty young. And it's my experience, at least my personal one, that my friends that had waited in life seemed to appreciate it just a little bit more than maybe I did. I was so young and the hustle and bustle of life and trying to make a living. It just appears like when you wait a little while to have children, that moment is just maybe even just a little bit more special. So,
Wes, I agree with you. I have to say, in a lot of respects, Harrison keeps me young. I'm doing things that I think I'm going to be 63 in April. Most 63-year-olds are not doing. He's very into sports and baseball, so I'm always out there with him doing that. But on the other hand, I do feel a bit old because all of his friends' dads are that much younger than me. So trying to keep up with them is tough. but I do the best I can, and I'm being the best father that I can, and I think he appreciates that. So
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. It definitely gives you a different perspective of the world, and I'm with you. It definitely adds to your life. You don't know
and
until
your
you're actually.
mortality too. I mean, it certainly early in my life, I did experience a lot of death in my family and friends and relationships and stuff like that. But having a child is sort of like puts things even greater in perspective as far as what you've accomplished, what you want to accomplish, and just sort of cherishing your life and your life's mission, and trying to encourage that for him to carry that on. So yeah.
So what was life like in Queens when you were a child? What was that whole experience like?
I had a very normal childhood. I mean, I'm the youngest of 6 children, but that being said, my parents had 4 within a certain number of years, and then there was almost a 10-year gap, and they had my brother James, and then 2 years later they had me. So my best recollections are really just growing up with one brother, and it was sort of a nice suburban middle class neighborhood that we grew up in. It was called Floral Park, Queens. I mean, it was Queens, so we were always in the park. We were on the street. We were playing touch football. We were playing stickball, stoop ball, all the things that, everybody reads about kids in Queens doing. We all rode our bikes. We came home and jumped on them and met and played basketball, and, had to be home by 6 o'clock for dinner. And I have no complaints. In fact, I have great fond memories of growing up in Queens. But, very much like my brother Robert, I also knew that there was a big world out there. And the idea of staying in that town was something that I knew I was going to have to escape at some point. And I did as soon as I got out of school. Sure.
Like most of us. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do have friends that are still there, and they're happy there, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody's got their path. I mean, I don't judge anybody, but I knew for myself that I had to go out and explore and travel a bit and experience different cultures and people. So that's what I did.
About at what age did you kind of like get that sense that, hey, I want to go out and explore the world? Was that like in your teens, or was it even
I would say
that?
in my teens, some point in like 13, 14, when I started high school. I went to an all boy Catholic high school, and I was a very good academic student, but I really had to apply myself. But even the earlier years and into those years, I was very into music, and I was a drummer, and that's what I thought my path would take me on. And, being a drummer or have any sort of creative spark in you, you sort of get something starts bubbling up in you that you're like, there's something else out there. And, having my brother Robert, who left when I was 3 years old, I really didn't know him as a brother, but every now and then he would come and visit us, and he came oftentimes with Patti Smith, and to see these creatures walk down the block to the house, I was just like, wow, there's something unique and something exciting and something out there for me. So I would say somewhere around 12, 13, 10, 11, 12, 13, I was just like, all right, there's something else out there for me.
I read that when you were thinking about Robert and Patti coming home to visit, that you also looked at them like rock stars because, the way they dressed and how they carried themselves. And talk about that for a minute.
They were rock stars in my mind. I mean, let's face it. I think it's known, I can tell people that the relationship between my father and my brother was very strained. I mean, my father was a very working class, sort of white collar worker, engineer, brilliant, very creative in his own respect, and I would be happy to talk about his creativity as well. And I think perhaps that might be where there was a butting of heads, because Robert was just a product of the 60s with long hair, creative and wearing his jewelry, leather. Patti Smith just being Patti Smith and coming with her persona. It was like night and day for me. It's like, I had my father in his tie with his pens in his pocket, and Robert and his leather and scars on his neck. And, it was amazing. It was amazing. And it touched me in a way I think it didn't touch my brother James, who's 2 years older than me. I mean, not to say that James didn't have a great relationship with him, but I mean, I think Patti she wrote a book. They used to give me these artists for children books, and she wrote in there one time, hope you'll one day too. And she told me that Robert knew that I had this creative spark in me, that I would sort of follow in the path at some point. So there you go.
There you go.
He saw it in you at even just a young age.
He did. I think my being a drummer too, and I think I probably had a little bit more of a sparkle in my eye to him, and more curiosity and asking him questions, and than the rest of the family did. And he must. Yeah, it's historically written, and it's mentioned that he knew that somehow that I would be the one.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you talked about your dad having, this artistic ability, and is he the one to kind of introduce you to photography, even though everybody would assume Robert did, but it was really your dad, right?
It was really my dad. Yes. Yeah. My dad and my mom were high school sweethearts. They grew up in Jamaica, Queens. They had a little business, believe it or not, of processing people's film. So my father had a darkroom, and he had his roller cord camera, which is a 2.25 camera, a medium format camera. And he would take pictures and process it and make contact sheets for it. And then they started a little business. So when I got to, I don't know what age I was, I showed an interest in photography, and, I saved my money, and I went into Manhattan. I got my first Pentax K1000 35 millimeter camera. And it was my father who, sat with me and taught me about shutter speeds and apertures and the relationships and depth of field. And we went in the backyard and we did experiments with fruit, and focus and all of that. And, I love doing that with him. But my father's creativity not only was that, but as an electrical engineer, he just was a magician with inventing things for the house. And I don't remember a time that any service guy ever came to fix any appliances or the cars. He was just very sort of creative in that respect as well. So I appreciate that. And I think there's that side of my brain as well. But I cannot get under a car. Don't ask me to do that. I have no idea what's going on there.
You and me both.
Okay.
Well, that's a cool story. I mean, obviously that's where that curiosity comes from. And it's really neat that your dad took time with you. And, photography is it's an abstract thing. So to be a young kid and wrapping your head around, f-stops, apertures, and shutter speeds, that's really neat.
Well, like I said, I did well in school, and I think I was very sort of math inclined and science inclined. And I think the mechanics of the camera and the relationships, there's a lot of that aspect of photography. And it's interesting because I gravitated toward that. And I think that's why the darkroom ultimately became a very, very important space for me in my creativity, because I like that aspect of photography and not just about the visualization. I mean, Robert was very sort of he had a vision and he had an idea and he had a way of seeing, and he didn't know how to process a roll of film. He didn't know how to print a negative. And that's the difference between my path and where his path went. But yeah, I mean, at a young age, learning that. But to be honest with you, it was really my first experience in the darkroom that solidified my whole path. Once I got in there and I took a workshop in college, there was no turning back at that point for me. That's when things all sort of came together.
So let's talk about that, because you went to Stony Brook.
I did.
At University of New York. What was that experience like for you?
It's a state university of New
Oh,
York.
state. I'm sorry. Thank you.
After that all-boy Catholic high school thing, I knew that I needed to go to a university and stay on a campus and explore other areas of life rather than studying. I mean, Stony Brook did have a reputation of being a quote-unquote party school, which I was attracted to. But I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went there. I had graduated high school having finished my first year of college because I was in an accelerated program. So I got into my first year of college and I already had 34 college credits. So I really only had 3 years ahead of me. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. I took psychology courses. I even took an early computer class, which back in those days, we're talking about 1979, 80. We're not talking about the computers that we're now talking through. We're talking about, stacks of cards and running them through a big machine and the programming. Long story short, none of that was sort of jiving with me. And then there was a small art department at Stony Brook. Stony Brook certainly is not an art school. It's not known for the arts. And an even smaller photography program. So I interviewed, you had to be interviewed, and Michael Edelson was the head of the photography department. And by that time, Robert was already forging a career. So he was aware of Robert. And I don't know whether that what got me in or what, but I got accepted to that photography program. And just prior to that, I had taken a workshop and processed my first roll of film and printed the first time. And that was, like I just said, that's what set me on my path and my determination of this is what I wanted to do in life. Now, it wasn't easy because I only really had 3 years to graduate and I had to change my focus, and it was going to require another half a year or a year of school. So, going home to my dad, it wasn't an easy conversation to have because, now as an older man and a man even older than my father was when we had this conversation, I certainly know it was out of love and for me that he was just concerned about how you're going to make a living, how you're going to make money, or what are you going to do about pensions, and what are you going to do about retirement, and all the things that dads should be concerned about. But when you're a kid, 18, 19 years of age, you're not thinking that. You're not thinking, all you're thinking about is I need to get out of here and I need to explore and I need to be creative, and no matter what it takes. So it was sort of like like I said, a difficult conversation. And he had me in a couple of tears, I remember. But my mother stood up for me. She did. And she said, listen, that's what he wants to do. So let's support that. And that's set the whole thing in motion. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Your relationship with your parents is the same as mine. My dad would give me the story. My mom, just whatever I wanted, she pretty much gave into. So, yeah.
Yeah. It's a tough situation. It's like Harrison isn't showing any sort of creative bend right now. I think I mentioned to you, he's really into sports and into math and stuff like that. And my wife is a curator. So we're both in the visual arts. Obviously, if it was something that he wanted to do, I would encourage it. But if it's not, I'm okay with that. It's a tough life. It's a tough life. I am fortunate to have, been in a position to have made money first as an assistant. And then, once I was out on my own, sort of having a show and, then building works and building a collection of collectors that are loyal to me. But let's face it, it's certainly a difficult life, especially if you're not a quote unquote commercial photographer. But even that has changed. I've had assistants of mine that are commercial photographers, but they're struggling right now because that whole model has changed as far as magazines. There are no magazines anymore, and everybody just doesn't have a budget anymore. So life as an artist, and I consider myself more of an artist and a photographer, is not an easy life, but I'm grateful.
You really have to want it to make it work, right? You
do.
really have to be invested and all in to make this thing go.
You do. And I think it's no matter whether you're a musician or a visual artist, anybody who's a creative, you have to be completely dedicated to it and not question. You have to dream big. You have to be a dreamer. And whenever I have taught, and it's very limited, I've never really taught too many formal classes, but I always encourage anybody in that creative field that you have to be a big dreamer and you have to not let things get in your way, or there's somebody else that's going to be there to take your place. So there you go.
Yeah.
Now, were you like that even as a child, a dreamer?
It's a good question. I mean, I think my dreaming really began when I started the photography path. I mean, I was a dreamer when I was a drummer, that's for sure. And I still dream about it. Because I think I mentioned that was where I thought I would be going with my life. But, you know, I was just a kid like any other kid, but it was more that those teenage years that I just started having some sort of eureka moments and dreaming and thinking where it could lead me and what kind of life I'm going to live and all of that. Yeah. And, you know, I'm always quite impressed or surprised when people say that they don't have any regrets. I mean, I do. And there's certain things that I would do over if I had the chance. But I mean, I think that's all part of the process of living.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you still have a drum set? Do you still play the drums?
You know, I don't, but Harrison does. Harrison does. You know, I'm big into baseball and I was big into drumming, and he seems to be, I mean, the drumming on his, I think it's a little bit of me trying to relive. I mean, he does take lessons and he's very good at it, but I don't know whether he's got the passion for it the way I did. I mean, I certainly didn't need any encouragement to go downstairs and practice where he does. But we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
I think that's really cool, and I think you're doing it right, that you're not pushing him in any one direction. You're just letting him find his way and explore and do his thing, as all kids should, without, you know, being heavy-handed. And
he's only 8 too, and it's like, you know, a lot of the artists and a lot of the musicians that I've admired, and I read their biographies, and they only really started having a passion or started playing when they were 12 or 13. So, you know, you want to introduce them to a lot of things, but not be heavy-handed. And then, you know, maybe he'll give it up for a little while, but then, you know, when he's 13, 14, he'll be like, wow, that was really cool, and want to pick it up again. I don't know. I mean, he's a great kid and he's smart, and I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah, no, I think that's smart. You know, you just never know where that inspiration is going to come from and what's going to spark their interest, you know?
No, you never know. I mean, life throws us all a lot of curveballs. So, you know, it's where your mind's at when that ball comes in. It's either, you know, catch it and it's a strike, or, you know, throws you a little bit off course. But, you know, you just have to, I mean, for me, I just sort of had to roll with things and let my life lead me. I led it in certain respects, but things led me in certain directions as well. And I think you have to keep your spirit open to that. Or, you know, you're going to fight your destiny somehow.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So you grew up playing baseball yourself. You played Little League and that sort of thing?
I mean, like I said, I mean, I was in Little League for a little bit, and I love sports and playing basketball with my buddies. And, you know, I was sort of that kind of kid too, but I had no ambitions of being a professional ball player. I think Harrison, to be honest with you, he's a different story, but I think a lot of fathers of 8-year-old kids think the same thing. So I would love to see the Mapplethorpe name on the back of a Major League Baseball team one day, but you know, whatever. You know, we're having fun now, and that's all that matters. And he is excelling. He's very good at at the sport. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
outside of drumming and sports and the seeds that were being planted by your father in photography, did you have any other interest in art, like drawing or anything like that growing up?
You know, I did, and I only realized that later when I looked back. And I mean, Robert was a larger than life figure for me early on. I mean, because he went to Pratt Institute, which is a big art school. He knew his path from a very early stage. So we had paintings and drawings, prints, not photographs of his on our wall at home. And I remember sitting, not only his things, but other things that were on the walls, sitting with a pad and pencil and looking at them and trying to make sense of it and draw and try to figure that all out. I wasn't talented as far as I didn't have a natural talent to draw and sketch, but I always would sit down and sort of like try to make something. So I don't know. I mean, at that early stage, I didn't think that was where I was going to go with it, but it's just interesting to look back and see that that's what I was doing. I mean, I even took a piece of paper when I was young, and with a rubber stamp, I stamped January 1st, then January 2nd, and I made this great sort of interesting abstract collage of every day of the year. And I still have that to that day, and it's interesting when I look at that, and I was like, and look at what I'm doing today or what I've done in the last few years, and the relationship of that. So I don't know. I mean, at a young age, I guess I had a little thing going on there, but I wasn't aware of it. I was more focused on, just playing with my friends, listening to music, and doing well in school. I was very passionate about making sure I was on the honor roll and getting A's and all of that, which, I don't know how important that is, because there's an awful lot of things that I look at the calculus and stuff that I did when I was in school, and it's like it might as well be a foreign language because I have no idea what I was writing about.
Right.
But it sounds like even at a young age, and obviously those experiences still play in the evolution of who you are as an artist, even from those younger years. But it sounds like you were definitely a goal setter in your youth. Yeah.
I suppose I was. I mean, I think I struggled academically until about the third grade and math-wise. And I remember something triggered in me at that age, and I just turned it all around. And then the math is what really inspired me in school. And I think about that now, and I think about how abstract math is and how creative it is. I don't know. I mean, I think I was just like any other kid, and I just sort of, was growing up and not aware of really what I wanted to do. But I started setting goals, I would say, in high school, in high school years, teenage years.
That's interesting with the whole math thing. Do you remember what the real turning point was as far as like the catalyst? Was it a particular teacher that you had at that time, or you just said, "Hey, I'm just going to figure this out no matter what. I'm tired of struggling with this whole math thing"?
It was I guess it was when I was because Harrison's in third grade now, and he's doing multiplication and division. And I had a little struggle with the multiplication tables, doing them very quickly, which is what he's doing now. So he's a lot more advanced than I was. And I think I got frustrated with that. And I didn't want, I don't know, I just sort of applied myself. And I was like, I'm going to get through this. And I think it was around that third grade and the multiplication, because I remember sitting there and the teacher, 5 times 6 and then 7 times 9. And I was still working on 5 times 6. And I got so flustered. I wish my brain wasn't working quick enough. So I don't know, something talking to my father just sort of turned that around for me. Yeah.
When you graduated from college, did you feel like that experience, that more of a formal training in photography and getting the technical side of things, do you think that prepared you for going on and being a professional photographer?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I don't know. It was like I said, it was a very small program. And let's just say there were maybe, say, 15 kids in photography one. Every year it got cut in half. So then there was 7, then there were 3. So at the end of my 3.5, it took me 3.5 years. I did have to add an extra half of a semester or 1 semester onto my college education. I had taken every photography class offered, and I had taken every independent study. I stayed on campus 1 year and worked in the photography lab in the campus. That was everything for me. And my professor, who just recently passed away last year, who I kept in contact with, I have to credit him for helping me believe in myself and teaching me the craft and about exposure and development and dodging and burning and all the things that you do. I mean, it's all film related. I mean, we can talk about digital a little bit later in the conversation if you like, but I still shoot film. I still love film. I still love the darkroom. And, my experience with light meters and lighting all prepared me for subsequently when I got out of school and started working for my brother, who didn't have that. He was never really trained. And I think I mentioned didn't know how to process a roll of film or print a negative. I mean, before I worked in his studio, he did brilliant pictures. And in fact, some of those pictures I think are his best work. I mean, but it was very simple. It was one light with a fill and f/16 at a 60th of a second. That was his magic, his magic thing. But so when I got there, since I had more training, I was able to upgrade the studio and get more sophisticated lighting and hair lights and bills and do meter readings and more mixing natural light and artificial light. So all of that training that I had in school prepared me for that. And I think my brother Robert really appreciated that in me. So it was a nice collaboration.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, because in your B&H presentation you talked about collaboration of a studio assistant with the photographer. And, I've done a lot of second shooting and not darkroom stuff for professional photographers. And Todd has worked as assistant, but a lot of times we don't think it is a collaboration. And I really appreciate the fact that you really made it a collaboration, even with your assistants when you're working on some of your other projects, that you labeled it as a collaboration. And when I looked at what you were doing with Robert, it really seemed like, he had the vision that you mentioned, but you collaborated with him in a sense of providing something that he lacked or he just didn't really care about. So I really appreciate you talking about that. So talk about when you first went into Robert's studio, in one of the interviews you said you kind of stood back a little bit and then you slowly started taking more control. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, you have to understand that when I got out of school and I went and visited Robert, I mean, Robert said he was definitely in a position that he needed somebody in the studio. He was a bit reluctant to have me, his brother, who he didn't really know, in there because he certainly didn't want a reconnection to the family because there was a schism there. But so I wasn't just any assistant. I was an assistant who happened to be his brother too. So I was very cautious and I was very respectful of his process and interested in learning his process. And I would be very sort of in the background and wait for him to ask for me. And as time went on, and time went pretty quickly as far as our forging a relationship that was a friendship, really. And it was beautiful in that respect. I mean, I think he loved the fact that I was his brother and I was a blood relationship. But it wasn't long before all of a sudden I think he realized that because I had the training and I knew what I was doing in the studio, that he would be calling on me more and more to be by his side and load the backs and take the meter readings and change the light. And it was necessary for him because, I mean, he was just focused on his vision And so for him to have to work and be concerned about that the shadow detail is not going to be there because it needs a little kick light or a little kick in there, it wasn't his concern. It shouldn't have been his concern. So I loved being those hands for him. And hey, listen, I knew his photographs before I ever started working for him. I knew them very well. I mean, I grew up in the same house as he did. We had the same parents. We went to the same church. I mean, it was like there was a commonality in our dialogue and our upbringing that it was very sort of easy for me to sort of assimilate and see what he was doing and how he was doing it and how it could be improved. I mean, as the years went on, I tend to think that myself, and there were a couple of other assistants involved in the mix too, we got it so perfected that some of the later flowers and some of the later portraits are almost too perfect for me. And that's why I look back on those days before me when he was just F16 with a monolight with a thing that I was like, that's what I appreciate. So, but he loved that. He loved the perfect shadow where that shadow met. So it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And, but it was a collaboration. It certainly was a collaboration. I don't know if he was alive today, whether he would say that, but I would hope that his spirit feels that.
Yeah, for sure. I read that you said that you liked his more rawness in his earlier stuff because you said it became too slick. And I thought that was interesting because all of us want to search for perfection, and you were able to really kind of get as close as you possibly can in that kind of setting. And then you kind of not recoil, but for lack of a better word, kind of recoil back to like, I like his earlier stuff better, even though you were kind of instrumental or with a group of you making him really almost perfect.
That is what he wanted. And so it's only in hindsight or retrospect that I'm saying that, because I mean, we would sit at the end of the day and look at the photographs and say, and they are beautiful. I mean, just the way we would overexposed. And I wasn't printing Robert's photographs when he was alive. Tom Baril was. And, I certainly would like to talk about Tom because Tom was instrumental in, I mean, even though I had a fundamental understanding of what is involved in working in a darkroom, I learned a lot because I would always get in that darkroom and stand by his side and watch him when I could. But we just had a good communication with the overexposure and then the diffusion to make the skin so sort of creamy white and glowing and all of that. So it was I don't want to say machine because that sounds like we were just churning things out, but we were cogs in a machine that all sort of worked well together. The gears all sort of worked well together. Yeah.
How pivotal was that to stand next to him as he was printing your brother's photographs?
Well, Tom Baril is a master printer. There's no doubt about it. And just seeing how he burned and dodged, and I don't know, I think it just sort of, you learn by just observation. And to this day, when I print negatives, and I do all of Robert's printing now, and I think, it was the late 90s when Tom's career of his own was taking off. So he was less and less interested. Robert had passed away. And it was time for him to go. And I was sort of the heir apparent because I knew the negatives so well. I had been in the studio when we exposed them. I had watched Tom. So now that I had that experience working with Tom, now when I look at the negatives, I can even recall, being in the darkroom with Tom. I mean, I've got my own manners now. I mean, it's years later. I mean, today is, just a couple of days ago, March 9th, marked the 34th anniversary of Robert's passing. So it's been this many years that we're, it's a great memory, but it's a distant memory in a lot of respects. But I take printing his negatives very, very seriously, and I'm very honored to have that in my life, aside from my own career. There are times that I'm sitting there. One day I was printing a negative of, I don't know, Alice Neal, Bryce Martin, Patti. And I just was like, wow, this is amazing. It's like, I just am so blessed to have that responsibility. So I love it.
I'm glad you mentioned that because it's a huge responsibility. You're preserving your brother's legacy.
Certainly.
And you get to be part of that history. Also, you got to experience some of these photo shoots when you worked with them. So you know exactly what, like you said, what was going on. Now, when you're in the dark room with Tom, were you able to communicate some of those things because you were part of the shoot and you kind of knew what was going on as far as, or he just did his own thing?
I think there was some communication because, at the end of the day, when the studio manager left and Tom left, and oftentimes I found myself sitting with Robert and smoking a joint and looking at the pictures we did the other day that were just printed, and I mounted them and they were all retouched. And, we would talk about the skin tone or the highlights or the shadows or where this shadow fell on the backdrop and stuff like that. So I got that communication from Robert. So I was able to communicate that to Tom as well, that Robert really likes that. Hey, listen, Robert was a very hands-on guy, even though he didn't know how to print. He would walk into the darkroom and say, you know what, that's a little too contrasty, or that's a little too hot, or something like that. Not often, because Tom had it pretty much down, but even just sitting with Robert and going over contact sheets, what a great memory that is. I mean, with the grease pencil, and we'd go through them and that's a good one. And then I'd say, how about that one? Oh yeah, that's a good one. And it was fun. And, to this day, editing photographs and film is something I love doing, but it was a great experience.
So in your article you wrote for Elle magazine, I want to quote something. You said, there was something magical in the simplicity and the straightforwardness of it all. I just love that statement because you kind of set the stage. You were set back and look at the stuff that's already mounted, and you guys were, or Robert and you were kind of giddy over it because, the perfection and how magical it was.
After a few years in the studio, I got so absorbed by Robert and his photographs, and we're talking about, having a spark of my own creativity. I knew that in order for me to have my own career, I needed to sort of distance myself a bit from that because, it was all consuming. It's like, when you're in Robert's studio, it's all about Robert. It was all about Robert's photographs. It's about his films, about his, about the darkroom, all of that. You had little time for yourself. So I surprisingly had the wherewithal and the strength to leave the studio. I mean, in college, it's all I wanted to do is work with Robert and get to know Robert. And after 2 short years, I was just like, you know what, I got to get out of here because I don't want to be Robert's assistant for the rest of my life. So I didn't think just working in some other studio, trying to get a job with Avedon, which I'm sure Robert would never have let me do anyway, or any other photographer, wasn't distancing myself enough. So I moved to California. I moved to the West Coast, where I had another brother living there. So I was able to stay with him for a bit. And I got assistant jobs at Playboy magazine. So I was assisting all the photographers at the magazine. And I have to tell you something, that the difference in the studios was so dramatic because we would be working on sets with maybe 15 heads lighting the set or the interior. Sometimes it was done on location, but a lot of times it was a set, and you'd have like 15 heads. And, all of this, it was an amazing experience. But I kept thinking back at Robert's studio, and it's like one head, perhaps, maybe with a little fill or a second head. And I was like, that's all you need. You don't need all of this. So it was a good experience for me to see the other side. I mean, it's a magazine, and that's what it was all about. And they did need it for what they were trying to achieve. But my vision or my passion or my idea of photography more had to do with that simplicity of light and just using natural light or something like that. So, I mean, I did go back to the studio and work with Robert again after that 2 or 3 year period in the West Coast working at Playboy. And, we did at that point have a few more lights, but I never suggested going in that direction at all to Robert because he just wouldn't have had it,
Right.
Yeah.
When you're doing your current stuff, do you still sit back and feel like it's magical? I mean, your stuff is not simplistic. Let me interrupt you, but your stuff is not simplistic. So I can't say magical and simplistic. I get this feeling that you probably still have that sense of how magical it is.
I do. I mean, my work has progressed quite a bit in the 30 some odd years that I've had my own career. I certainly love taking portraits. That started even in college. And, I think the nude is a classic study for most artists and photographers. So that was a passion of mine. And I learned the idea of shooting still lifes from Robert because it was a good way to learn how to experiment with lighting and things like that with a subject that's not alive, say. So all that early work had those sort of elements in it. And I loved doing it. And it was my first show was that sort of work, but that work had the Robert stamp on it. And even though it did really well, I think there was a burning desire in me to do something else, to do something of my own. And so that's why subsequent groups of work were always sort of experimental, but at first, but all of a sudden I would get to a point that I would get so excited about it. And so sort of that it just made me continue and carry on. Listen, when you're experimenting with a new group of work, the beginning is a horrible period to go through. Well, for me anyway, because it's like I have nothing. I'm getting nothing. It's nothing. But you read more, you think more, and all of a sudden you get something. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's good. But then I could maybe do this. And then all of a sudden it gets a little better. And then all of a sudden you're in this sort of groove that you're not even really, for me, I'm not even thinking at that point. I'm just allowing things to happen organically. And that's where the magic happens. That's where the magic happens.
Sometimes it takes that moment where you have to kind of step away just a little bit, kind of get out of your way for it to kind of take hold, right?
You said it perfectly, Todd. You have to sort of get out of your own way. Yeah, you can't overthink it too much. I'm a very sort of, my inspiration and my creativity is early in the morning. So I'm very, very early before, and I almost think that I'm almost not awake in some respects. Like my mind is, or maybe I just feel like I'm just in like a zone that allows me to sort of start something and make the mistakes. And I still have the whole day ahead of me to sort of experiment. And, but a lot of times it is sort of getting out of your way, like you say. Sure.
And I love that you have this experience of the contrast between working with your brother and then doing the Playboy thing, because I'd heard stories from some of my professors that had a connection to Playboy, how many lights that they would have on set. And I'd always try to wrap my head around it, like 15 lights. And they would say the exact same thing. All these lights, layering light to just get that perfect skin tone and that feel that Playboy has. And it's hard to wrap your head around that. And I love the fact that you had that experience with Robert, then you had the Playboy experience, and then you're like, it doesn't have to be this complicated. Like, I appreciate the simplicity of what I experienced working with my brother and how that resonated with you. This whole time that you were working with your brother and then in LA and then coming back, and these initial nudes, you were photographing and doing your own stuff during this time. Is that correct?
Always very quietly, though. I mean, even those first couple of years in Robert's studio, I mean, when the end of the day, when Robert left, I would, and sort of almost I don't want to say sneaking, but, Robert never dug the idea of as much as he loved me and he loved having me in the studio, that's where he wanted to keep me. And he never dug the idea of having another Mapplethorpe in the art world. I mean, to the point where he suggested, and I thought it was a good idea for me to change my name. And I did for a number of years. My mother's maiden name is Maxie, so I was Edward Maxie for quite a while. And I can only, as difficult as that was at the time, I can only think that Robert realized that I had a talent. I mean, if I didn't have a talent, I don't think he would really put up too much of a stink. But I think he saw that I had a talent. And, he said to me, and that was another terrible day, that, I'm not going to have my kid brother ride on my coattails. And I remember that day vividly. And it's even troubling to recollect because, I was like, come on, it's like, I just love photography and I love you and I love working with you, but, don't be dad and cut me off and not encourage me. But so, listen, I think a lot of artists are insecure individuals. And Robert certainly had his insecurities and I have my own and we all do. But that was a tough one. That was a tough one.
That would be crushing
because you looked up to him and having somebody that you love and respect and being blood, that had to be a hard pill to swallow and hurtful. And I've seen a couple interviews with you where you talk about that moment, and I can see it on your face. It's like that would be really difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. When I went to Robert and told him that I was going to leave the studio after the first couple of years, I mean, he relied on me so much in the studio that he was angry at me that how dare I get up and leave and try to make something of my own life. I mean, it was pretty surprising to me, especially since he had that done to him when he was going to Pratt and wanting to not become a commercial artist, but become a fine artist. And this was before photography even entered his thing, and my father not, paying for the rest of his education because it was going to be more college and all of that. So it was just sort of like passing down the same sort of thing that hurt him to me. So I guess, it happens.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I won't do that to Harrison.
Good. You're a good dad.
Those are those moments that you kind of cache, right, in your memory, and you're like, okay, I know how I felt in this situation, and I don't want to do that to someone else, whether they're close to me or otherwise, right? Like you said, we all have our insecurities, but you try to be cognizant of how you relate and communicate sometimes to people, and sometimes that's hard too, right? To like make that realization that, wow, maybe I didn't handle that situation quite correctly or do what I should have in that scenario.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I mean, it's all long ago history now, but I concentrate on the good memories and the fine memories and what I did learn from him and what he did give me, and appreciate how much of an artist he was and is in some respects, because there was no standing. There was nobody was going to stand in his way of achieving what he wanted to achieve. It's sad, yes, that he died at 42 years of age, and what would have been. But what can you say about that? I mean, who knows what my life would have been had he lived? So, you just sort of remember the good things and question the things that are somewhat upsetting or you don't quite understand, and just make it your mission not to do that to the next guy. So that's why I said I won't be that way. I won't be that way.
It's all part of the journey. It's all part of the ride, right? Like you choose to remember the best of times, which I think is really smart. But all these different situations and experiences help form who you are as a person and as an artist, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why it's like when people say I don't have any regrets, it's like, listen, I did some pretty crazy things in my life. And I'm very glad to be sitting here being able to talk to you, because some of those things could have led in a very dark and way they did, but they could have gone in a very bad path. But it's all part of who I am, and it's all part of the person I am. And the person I am is the person that conceives of these projects and works with the creative. So it's like I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today if I didn't have those experiences. So life is a journey, and it's like that's what you have to sort of be intrigued and excited and interested in it, or else you just living a day-to-day mundane life, and I try not to do that. So
yeah, that's not what you wanted from the get-go, right?
Not from the get-go. Not from the get-go.
So I got a kind of a weird question, but talking about Robert and you and how he created his vision and how you create your vision of your work, is there similarities, or did you pick up on anything that he was putting out there, or is it so internal that you can't really compare and contrast?
Well, there's certainly similarities in the early work that I did, and like I said, because we were both raised in the same environment and the same parents, and then working so closely with him and being so instrumental with the lighting and the exposure, and then working with Tom in the darkroom. Just I knew the whole process. I knew that whole process. So it was, I'm not going to say easy, but it was sort of made sense that first group of work was going to be very tied to that. But it was that burning desire to do something on my own that I think is what is most interesting to talk about here.
Yeah.
I think, unlike a lot of artists, I consider myself a very reactionary artist, because I had something to react to. Had I not had Robert in my life, the work that I'm doing today certainly wouldn't exist. It's like I reacted to the fact that my work looked like his, or had the same influences, or had the same vision. So that's why I decided that I was going to take my camera and I was going to go underwater, and I was going to photograph. I had no ambition to learn how to dive. It was not something that I would have thought to ever do in my life. I'm not an adventurer, but I thought I've got to get out of the studio and I've got to do something different. And what about learning how to dive and taking my camera underwater? And I have to say that ambition and that decision is what has led to what I am doing today. So I am very, very grateful that I had that wherewithal, not to think of the idea, but I just had the wherewithal to apply myself and learn how to got certified, and learn how to not only dive, but take pictures underwater at the same time, which I don't know whether either of you have ever done that, but it's not easy. It's not easy. This is pre-digital, and I'm talking about taking a medium format Hasselblad camera underwater. And it was very challenging and reaped very few results in the beginning, but I eventually figured it all out and I did what I wanted to do down there. I got out of the studio and I was like, all right, I'm going to be floating and I'm going to be on my side, no studio lights, even though I did have lights for my camera. But I thought, what other environment could be more foreign? It's not something Robert would ever have done. So, yeah.
Sometimes you have to take it to some other extreme, right? To get out of your comfort zone. And I love this body of work, Undercurrents. I was talking with Wes before we jumped on the podcast, and And it was definitely something I wanted to talk about. And in that B&H talk that you did, I was just intrigued. And I love that whole series. I think it's timeless and abstract and just beautifully done.
Thank you.
You know, when you look at a body of work from another photographer and you think, you have that moment where you're like, son of a gun, I wish I would have done that. You know that it's good work, right?
Yes. There are times I see artists work and I'm like, wow, that's a great concept. That's a great idea. I wish I had thought of it. But yeah, I mean, I had seen beautiful photographs taken underwater, but they were always National Geographic type things, and they were always color. And I just was like, you know what if I take my vision and I take my black and white film and go underwater and do it my own way? And I love that body of work too. And very little of it has been seen. But I think the most important part of that body of work is the surface studies that I did and the simple seascapes. I mean, I really wasn't that interested in photographing sharks or fish, or even though I did a whole series on the stingrays because they're just beautiful creatures. It's more, it's more about texture. It's more about tones and just. But interestingly enough, after I did this group, I looked at them and I can still see the same eye that I had in the studio and is related to Robert's. And so it was rewarding because I was like, you know what, this is just the way I see and the way I look, and there's no denying it, and there's no reason to fight it. So,
well, if you want to roll back to the top one,
sure.
Seascape, I think it is, in 1992. So when I first saw this, and I was never, if you ever listen to our podcast early on, I talk about how I don't like abstract stuff, but I've come to change my mind. But when I saw this, I thought of Rothko in a sense that, it's divided in half and there's a really strong presence in 3 different segments. So it's very Rothko-ish. And I do love this. I think there's something like, I think you said you came up with this Undercurrents from a dream, but having that moment of taking this dreamlike idea to executing it is just mind-blowing for me, because I would have had the dream and then I would have moved on. I love the fact that you're like, nope, I'm going to go out. I'm going to learn how to scuba dive on top of it. And then I'm going to go find a camera, a 2 1/4, by the way, that I can take under the water with me. What a brilliant. That's what makes you an artist, Edward. That's what makes you an artist.
Well, I got to say, it was not easy to find a housing for that Hasselblad. I just started taking lessons, and I got to talking about collaborations. I do want to mention that just before I decided to do this, a young British guy from England, his name is Jonathan Davies, and I call him Jonty Davies, and he has become my best friend, one of my best friends to this day. He came to America and had seen a show that I had done in London and wanted to work with me. So we had just started a relationship as in the studio, and I came upon this idea, and I was like, I could see the brilliance in Jonty. So I was like, Jonty, I said, I have this idea. Do you want to do this with me? And he didn't hesitate. So, I mean, even though this is my idea, but he was with me on all of these dives, and it was such a great experience and collaboration. And he would take meter readings, and we had so many laughs and so much fun. But I appreciate your words, and I appreciate the fact that I had the wherewithal to go ahead and do it. Is what you consider that I'm an artist, but it was pivotal. This whole group of work was so pivotal.
Do you feel like this is like the beginning of you finding your voice? This body of work, was this the beginning? Would you say?
Beginning, and if you look at that one that would look Seascape 1992, and you look at the top quadrant or a third of that, I somehow just got locked on that. And when you do dives, you do it's what's called a safety stop, and you have to hover for, it's been so many years. I'm trying to think how many feet, like 20 feet or something underwater, to let the nitrogen out of your bloodstream. And I was like, this is a waste of time for me when I have this camera in my hand. So I started concentrating on the surface of the water and just, I think if you scroll down, or maybe on the homepage, there's one of those. Oh, that one there. There we go. So I started concentrating on that. And then I was like, you know what? That's not so much a photograph to me. That's more painterly. That's more abstract. And I loved that. So I did a whole series on surface studies. And then, the next one thing led to the next with that. I loved working with water. So I was like, how am I going to work with water and not be underwater? So I started working with water in its solid state and working with blocks of ice. And that led to the Transmographs series.
Yeah, that's an amazing too. I so kind of want to experiment with that in my basement. I love these. These are because they're so abstract. And talk about that, because I mean, it's I can understand it came about as a transition from underwater to doing something in the studio. But I mean, once again, it's a brilliant idea that I've never seen before.
There's a history of people doing abstract portraits like Ouija, using mirrors and things. But I don't know. I don't know how these ideas come to you, but it's just like, how can I take that and work in the studio with it? And so I just tried it. I got a big block of ice, and I found a guy he was an ice sculptor. So he knew how to chisel ice, and he had all the tools to cut the ice, but I didn't want him to make a sculpture. I just needed him by my side. So we just started photographing flowers. And I think, flowers is a very sort of like subject I sort of coil from because of Robert's, I was talking about being reactionary. So I was like, I'm never going to do flowers, but I was like, you know what, maybe I can do flowers, and I can do them behind ice and make them my own. And, it became sort of a filter that I could manipulate and I could control. And with blowtorches, we had chisels, we had chainsaws, because every block of ice is different, obviously. And the block of ice in hour one is going to give you different results than hour two. And maybe hour two is perfect, but the next time you do it, you're not going to, it was challenging in that respect, because it's like you couldn't always depend on getting the same results. But there was a part of me that didn't want to get the same results. So I left myself open to what would happen each time. So, I mean, it was a lot of work and a lot of interesting things came along from it. Yeah.
Yeah,
a lot of trial and error, right?
Oh, for sure.
I love the portraits. I really love the portraits, and the portraits are creepy in a way. They're disturbing in some respects, but I have to say the most successful ones. I mean, this one that we're looking at right now is of my great friend Quentin, and something about people's personalities came through on these, and that is, I mean. It's scary in some respects, but Quentin was a brilliant guy and very creative guy. And I see that in this portrait of him. So I love that aspect too.
And it really looks like a Francis Bacon.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
There's Salvador Dali aspects in some of these. There's Cubism in some of these portraits as well.
So how thick is the ice that you're shooting through when you're shooting this?
Have you ever seen like a big commercial block of ice?
Yeah, like the big squares?
Cut it in half and make a base. So I would get 2 blocks of ice from each. So we're talking about a good 4 inches thick or so. And you just get the subject behind the ice, and you move the camera or you move the subject, and you go up and down, and you just I don't know whether I have any on my website, but I have a few contact sheets that I've printed large, just to show each frame, how each frame is a little bit different from the previous one.
Oh, that's incredible. I'd love to see that in a big print like that. That would be so cool. Yeah.
I did shoot video. Didn't really, I think I have it somewhere on VHS, just because it was the movement of it was so interesting. But I love these. And again, not many of them have been shown in an exhibition.
Really? It amazes me because they're just so stunning. This one, for whatever reason, reminds me of the old Phantom of the Opera movie type of thing going on here.
Right.
But these flowers, these Easter lilies, I mean, it looks like they're made out of smoke, like somebody actually like blew them, and I just think it's so brilliant. And I just love the feel and the energy of each and every one of these. It's spectacular.
So beautiful.
Thank you.
If I could ever encourage you to like do an exhibition of those, I would love to see, well, all your work actually. So, but I would love to see those. Those are amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
I love the fact that you would get these ideas. And I think a lot of people, myself included, get these ideas, right? And you think, oh, that's a great idea. But the difference is that you acted upon it, that you said, okay, I have already experienced a little bit of this. I know it might be difficult in the beginning. It might, it might not go anywhere, but I'm open to the experience to go explore this. And I think that's what makes your work so compelling, that exploration. And it's not the same thing over and over again. That's what excites me about your photography and your art, is that I'm not seeing the same thing twice.
No, everything builds upon the previous group. Listen, I have had ideas, and if you have an idea, you best jump on it, because I've had ideas, and then all of a sudden somebody else is doing something that maybe not identical, but
in the same vein, kind of.
In the same, yeah, to the point where I can't do that right now, because it's like somebody else's. It's a big world and a lot of creative people out there, and just because you have an idea, sometimes there's a collective thing going on, and you better jump on it. I mean, I'm working on something right now, and this is an idea I've had for a long time, and it's based on film grain. I mean, again, it's a process of photography. I love that whole process. And there's fine grain films, there's large grain films, and it has to do with your development, your exposure, and underdevelopment, overexposure, and all of that. And it's like, so I just love film grain. So I'm doing a whole project, and I'm letting it out there now. So if anybody else is doing it, I'm stating it first. I'm doing a whole.
We'll archive this, so it's your idea first. So.
Yeah.
Well, and you're not giving too much away, so that, I'll be really excited and curious to see when you're.
I will too. Release some started it and reading. It's going. I'm in that process right now that I told you about. It's like there's something there. It's not really exactly there yet, but something is leading me. It's leading towards something, and I'm in that zone now that I'm loving it. So.
The beautiful thing is there could be 100 people having the same idea or listen to this episode and have the same idea. They're not going to have your idea, and you're going to make it on the nth level better. So I'm excited to see your stuff. I truly mean that. So.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it'll definitely have that Edward Mapplethorpe stamp on it.
It's amazing. I want to talk about one thing, because I've just listened to a recent episode of a YouTube video, and they were talking about film size. So you've been shooting Hasselblad for a long time, and probably professionally all your professional life. What makes you pick, other than Hasselblad's a great camera, great lenses, but what makes you gravitate to the 2 1/4 format, the square format?
I like the fact that you don't have to turn the camera. You don't have to be horizontal, or you don't have to be a landscape or portrait. It's like, I like that square format. You have the ability to print it square, or you have the ability to make it crop the sides. I guess, working next to Robert was another reason. I just sort of like got used to that camera. And I mean, I've shot 35. In fact, the film grain series is using a 35 millimeter camera. I've shot 4x5, 4x5, and 8x10. First of all, they're cumbersome. And second of all, there's a whole other aspect of, tilts and swings and rises and falls. And it's like, I'm not an architectural. I mean, I know it's got its place, and I know there's, times that it's necessary, and I have a understanding of it, and I probably could work with it, but it's not spontaneous enough for me. So it's a 2.25, just as a roll film, 12 images on a roll. I shoot 120. I don't even know whether they make 220 anymore. Which, interestingly enough, I'll go back to the underwater. Listen, when you're underwater for 15, 20, or however long you're there, you can't change a back. So I'm sure like 12 frames is not a lot when you're underwater. So they make 70 millimeter backs for a Hasselblad. I'm sure they don't make them anymore. And they used to make 70 millimeter film spools, which was 70 millimeters, almost like a movie film. So I would have 70 frames on a roll. So I was so happy to find that out. And, they don't make that anymore either. They don't make 70 millimeter. I still have all the cartridges and all the cassettes, but I don't know. I just got used to looking through the viewfinder and of a Hasselblad camera. And, I was lucky enough to, even though I had my own equipment, I was lucky enough to inherit Robert's cameras, which I cherish and hold dear. And, I guess the fact that I used to be able to take a Polaroid, I had a Polaroid back for the Hasselblad that no longer exists. I don't know. It's just the format I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, because Todd has an RZ. My only medium format is an old Yashica mat twin lens. But something comes out of those. The medium format film there's something different about them. I know it's a bigger film, but there's something completely different from like a 35, and it's amazing. So.
And you know what? In the darkroom, I can roll 120 roll on a reel with so easy, but 35 millimeter still to this day is. It's like I told you, I'm shooting 35 for this project, and I pull my hair out every time I'm in there trying to roll it on a reel. It's just like it's not easy. I guess if you do it over and over and over again, but I never did, so it's like it's not easy. But
yeah.
Yeah, it becomes muscle memory after a while, right? But again, if you're not used to rolling it, it's a whole different ball of wax, and it takes time, and you can lose frames if you don't get it on there just correct.
I know. Well, luckily this group of work, I'm able to take 5 or 6 frames of the same thing, and then so if there was any sort of problem in the development, I still have it. So
I can't imagine rolling that big roll of 70 millimeter.
Oh, the reel was
that's intense, man.
It was yeah, 70 frames on the reel is literally that big. So
it's huge.
Yep.
But still at 70 frames, I mean, that's still not in the world of digital, right?
That's nothing.
That would be nothing. People would wrap off 70 frames, in a heartbeat. What's nice about shooting film and medium format is the intention and the spontaneity that you mentioned, right? Like there's a spontaneity that you don't have with digital because you're not getting that instant feedback all the time. You're not looking at the back of the camera. You're truly just focused on what you're trying to accomplish, the composition, the light, the whole gamut, right?
Yeah, you're more concerned. Listen, I don't know digital very much at all. That's not to say that I have not used digital in some respects, but it's rare, and because I don't have the knowledge of it. But when you're shooting film, I think you're just much more intentional, because 12 frames is 12 frames. Digital, you can just shoot. And I think it has made everybody a photographer, digital stuff. So I don't know. I don't know much about it. I mean, if anything that I do digitally, I have to rely on somebody else. I mean, as far as Photoshop, and I have a general understanding and I know what I want, but I can't necessarily get it. I'm just at I feel like I'm just at that generation. I wasn't young enough to learn it. And I'm like, the kids that are getting out of school now, they're so educated about it and they're so good at it that, like, I'd rather leave it in their hands. And as long as I'm just like Robert wasn't able to process a roll of film or print it, I could be there. I know what I want. I can steer it. I can be my thing, but I'm not the hands doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that you still shoot film,
I do too.
And that you have the ability to have control over the entire process, from the photography point of it, composing, photographing, to developing the film, which is an art in itself, and then the printing, which is a whole other art form in my book. And, that camera becomes like an extension of yourself. It's like another appendage, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And the times I use the camera most is my commission portraits. I mean, a lot of the latest bodies of work that I've done have no camera involved at all. So when we're talking about, now that we're talking about cameras and about film, it's my commission portraits of 1-year-old children that is when the camera comes out the most for me. And it's a body of work that I started over 30 years ago. And it was a commission portrait, and they had a child that was 1 year old. And there was something very special about that picture. And that's the first one, that one right there. It's cropped a little bit. And word of mouth. After I did that, she told somebody, then somebody commissioned me. And I just decided that I was just going to approach it the same way. And 30 years later, I've done a couple of hundred, I would say, of commissions of children pretty much on their first birthday. If I can do it on their birthday, I do. Sometimes it's not possible for me or for the parent. But it's such a rewarding aspect of my work. I love it, and it affords me to do other groups of work. Presenting the photographs to the parents, is a special moment to me, because I've had parents break down in tears because they don't really look like children so much. They're portraits of people that just happen to be one. And that's what I think separates them from baby pictures. I haven't really had no interest in being a baby photographer, but
I love that you said that, and I've heard you say that in other interviews, and I can relate. But I love the fact that you embraced it and then realized that this is an important body of work in your career.
It's just as big of a body of work as all the other things that I do. I don't consider this commercial work at all. I think this is a strong body of work. That, I don't know, it's just, I fell into. I mean, my professor of photography said there's two things I would suggest you never photograph, and one of them being babies and the other being animals. And here I am, probably most known for these baby photographs. So, and I have done animals too. I have done some animal photographs as well.
Okay. I love the consistency, because, and I don't know how many frames you shoot, but I'm sure it varies, but there's something very consistent about that. And granted, probably the lighting, the setup, but yet they're so unique in the sense that, there's these little personalities that come out and you capture them beautifully. These are stunning photographs, by the way.
Yeah, the setup has been the same from day one. Nothing has changed. I have the same lighting setup and same background and that same chair that the kid gets sort of strapped into for security purposes. And every time it's like I get a little anxious before they come in, because I never know what personality is going to walk in, and I never really know how they're going to react to the flash. But I have a routine. I certainly, over this number of years, I figured out a routine that works for me. But it's usually that first flash that is revealing. Some children just get so excited by it and so intrigued by it, so their eyes get bigger, and other children just get frightened by it. And I think that ends up being what opens that personality up. And I love the fact that, they're all titled by when they were born.
Oh, I didn't notice that. Yeah, they are.
Yeah. So when you produced your book, and there's 60 portraits in that book, is that correct?
I don't know. There's at least 60. Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember. I thought I read somewhere 60 for whatever reason, but yeah, they're not identified by name or anything like that, right? It's just the date.
No, because there are some of my clients are people that you would know, and I don't want that to be part of the element, and out of respect to them as well. I just like, it doesn't really matter names, or I think their moment in time is the time, the day, the time, and the date and the time that they were born. So it doesn't matter what background they come from, really.
So what's the darkroom process for these? A lot of dodging and burning, or are they you got it well lit enough that you don't have to do a lot of that?
It's funny you say that, because you would think that, just like Ansel Adams' own system, I've done it so often, I just put the negative in and it's beautiful. But no, it's every time it's, light may have changed, gotten a little bit closer, or I developed a little bit longer, or the development might have been a little bit warmer, so the negatives are more dense, less dense, and there's always burning and dodging. I mean, it's frustrating after all these years to realize that I have to burn and dodge, but it's important for me to get, the background is one stop darker than the subject, so that I get some tonality in that background. I don't want it to be paper white. So, but yeah, there's always burning in that corner to make sure you get it in, or dodging, this bottom part of the face or something.
Yeah. Well,
the chest always has to be burned in. The bottom half.
I asked this question because, some of our listeners aren't photographers. So I don't want them to think that this is, it's just a simple, I snap a shot and then I develop and it's done. No. It's a process. It's a laborious process at times.
Yes, it is. I mean, somebody had suggested my doing it digitally, but I decided not to, because, I mean, the idea of it crossed my mind, because I didn't know whether people really care anymore, whether you have a gel and silver print or a pigment print. I do. I know when I go to a gallery or I see somebody's photography show and I see pigment print, there's always a little disappointment for me. So I know that it might be easier for me to do it digitally, because you could shoot that much fat. I could shoot, I don't know, or edit, but I'm sticking with it. I'm sticking with this whole process, because, and I don't have anybody in the studio with me, because the fewer personalities in the room, the better. So I usually hopefully it's just the mother, or sometimes it's the mother with the dad, or the mother with a nanny or something like that. But, I just have them off to the side for however long I can have with that child, just one-on-one. So I don't have an assistant. I don't have anybody in the darkroom with me. So I photograph the child, I process the film, make the contacts, edit it, print it, mount it, retouch it, stamp it, and sign it. So,
nice. So how many frames do you shoot average? Like, are you doing 1 roll, 2 rolls, or does it vary?
wow. I mean, that really is a varying. Some children are happy to sit there excited, and they'll give me 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 rolls of film, and the 12 frames. Other kids, after the first roll is a disaster, and I'm like, oh man, the kid's like going nuts. And then the mother takes them out and puts them back, and maybe I'll end up with 3 rolls of film or something like that. And I'm never comfortable until I process the film and look at it, though. And knock on wood, I've been successful. I have never had to have anybody come back to the studio. So, I think after this many years, people know my photographs of children, and I always tell them, you really just have to accept your child the way they are that day. If they're crying, they're crying. I'll get maybe a great photograph of them crying. I'm not necessarily, in fact, there's very few times I will pick a smiling picture, because they just look, unless it's really genuine. If it's a genuine smile, I'm happy to print it, but most of them are pretty serious looking.
Yeah. Maybe that's what
I love that
is.
about them.
Yeah. Yeah. That is really cool. And so the parents commission the work, and then how many prints do they get? Or how many frames?
Two 20 by 24 gel and silver prints. And one thing that I insist on, and everybody understands this, is they don't see anything other than the final 2 prints, because the editing process is a big part of the whole process for me, because sometimes they look very identical, but there's a little lift of the chin or a little turn of the head that's right. Or sometimes it's a great picture, but it's out of focus. Listen, some of these kids are going, I'm shooting with a 120 millimeter lens, macro lens. So the depth of field isn't much. And I'm shooting at f/22, which means a big flash. It's a big flash for the child, but I need that depth of field because the kids are moving.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a picture I would love to print, but it's just out of the eyes or out of focus or something like that. So I move on from it. Whereas if you show proofs or contacts to a client, they're going to want that one. They're not going to understand the way I'm seeing. So it's understood. Not that I don't get some pushback from time to time, but it's pretty much understood.
Well, that's good. And I'm glad you hold your ground. And I'm glad you're still doing it in film and doing actual prints, because these are amazing. And you got a formula that is stellar. So these are amazing.
Thank you.
I love how personal the whole thing is, and I love that you don't invite the parents to be part of that, process of choosing the photograph, that it's really what you feel, what you were seeing, your vision, and that's why they're coming to you. Mm-hmm. That's why they're paying the money for that commission. Mm-hmm. And that you've been doing it for so long successfully, that's just.
And what I try to do is the ideal is, and it often happens, is I find one that I know, or I'm quite comfortable that the parent is going to like, that they will be very like, wow, that's my like. But there's that I try to choose one that's a little challenging, a little bit more revealing, and the one that I think is going to outlive the other one as far as historically, meaning like you're going to look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now and say, you know what, that is the better picture, because it's a little bit more revealing about the child. So that's ideally what I'm looking for. Not 2 very similar pictures, one easy and one a little bit more difficult. So
I love that idea. I love that.
And at 1 year's, you chose this because at that age, right, kids start to become somewhat aware. Is that the deal?
I think it's right at that moment that people, that the human development, first of all, they can sit. They're not flopping around. They have motor controls that they can sit on their own. oftentimes they're not walking yet, which is, so they have that, but their personality, it's that moment in time where I think that there's a little spark in that personality is there. And hey, listen, I don't know, one. I just one. I mean, it's better than two.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just,
Right.
I mean, people have asked me, do I have a follow up? And, it's rare that I ever see these children again. Not that I haven't, but I kind of like never meeting them again because they're just frozen in time for me. And that's all. I like that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I do too, that you have this shared moment for this brief time and you capture this one thing and then that's it. Like it's done.
It's done. It's done.
Yeah.
I don't know. First birthday, it's pretty momentous in one's life.
Tenet wants to acknowledge our media sponsor, New Magazine. That's NUE. You can follow both the national and the Denver edition of New Magazine on Instagram. The national edition can be found at new_magazine and the Denver edition at new_Denver_magazine. And I want to share with you something very exciting. Check out the newly launched New Denver Gallery Guide. Look for the signage that says New Denver Gallery Guide that has a QR code, scan it with your phone, and you have instant access to a comprehensive digital guide to Denver's finest galleries and exhibitions. Find this QR code in your favorite gallery, hotel, or coffee shop as you visit and explore Denver. Thanks for listening.
I'm Edward Mapplethorpe, and you're listening to the Tenet Podcast.
So obviously, I've seen videos of you work, and Polaroid is no longer part of the equation, which is unfortunate because I do miss a good looking at Polaroids. So you must live and die by the light meter,
I do miss that Polaroid. Even when I started this, Polaroid still had 664, which is what I used for the back of the Hasselblad. But I stopped doing it because sometimes it's that first frame that's important with these children. So I stopped doing it. But I would take many Polaroids just to check my lighting, just to make sure that, I would even do had the bulb and I would sit sort of get in focus and make sure that somehow the lighting, because, without a Polaroid, you don't know, maybe your lens isn't opening correctly, or there's so many things that can go wrong. And I don't have a second chance. I don't have a second chance with these children. So I do live by that light meter reading. Yes. And that's why until that film is done and processed and I see it, then I can rest. That was the other reason, maybe doing it digitally too, because I could check. Check, but no.
But again, like you said, that first frame could easily be the frame, right? And now you've wasted it on a Polaroid, and it could have been on film.
Mm-hmm.
I got to ask you, because things have changed in the analog world and film stocks have increasingly been done away with. Certain film stocks have been discontinued. What film stock do you like? And has that been the same film stock throughout your career that you use?
These used to be Kodak Plus X, but once they stopped producing that in 120, I've been using Ilford FP4.
Okay.
That's sort of what I use. I mean, I miss some of the grain structure of the Kodak. I liked better. But yeah, it's troubling. I mean, chemicals and papers in particular are becoming more and more difficult, and certainly there's less of a demand, so the price goes up. And well, one of the projects I did involves litho printing. I don't know whether you know anything about litho printing, but I did that for a 2008 project, and I want to reintroduce that. So that involves using a lot of different emulsions, a lot of different papers to get different results. And all the papers that I used in 2008 are not available any longer. So, and some of them lend itself to the litho process and some do not. So it's a whole new learning curve that I'm going through right now.
I bet constantly, but good for you for sticking it out and not giving in to the world of digital. I admire that.
Yeah.
What do you love about the darkroom? Like being in that space?
The solitude of it, I'm just me, myself, and my mind and my hands, and I have my music, so I'm not. I have some sort of thing to groove on, I guess, but I don't know. I love mixing chemicals. I love the idea of temperature control and also about, not to change the subject too much, but talking about digital and film and the darkroom. I've had this conversation with people because, like, I'll print a 2023 print of my brother's negative that they give me a match print from a 2010 or something like that. And it comes out a little different. I'm always trying to improve on the quality of the print. And they're like, well, this print's a little, and I said, what, that's the beauty of analog photography is every print has got its own personality. Whereas if you have a digital file and you hit print, you could make 20 of the same print and they're going to be identical. I like the fact that I could look at this print and say, you know what, this is a little darker, but I like this because I like that personality that darkroom prints, gelatin silver prints give you.
Yeah, the little anomalies from print to print. Because even when you have it down, when you're in there doing your darkroom dance, right, with burning and dodging, you never do it the same way twice.
You never do it the same way twice, and chemicals change, papers change, emulsions change. So you just have to run with it, work with it, and do the best you can.
So do you find it pretty meditative to be in that space, in that dark room?
I do. I mean, I spend hours sometimes at a time in there. And like I said, once things start happening and start gelling, there's nowhere else I really want to be. I just want to be there and do that next print and keep that creative flow going. I mean, eventually you tire out and you have to sort of like call it a day, but it's also an environment that can be frustrating. You have a good day. I've had days that nothing's happening. So I just dump the chemicals because I'm like, why am I going to waste my time and my effort? It's just something's not clicking here. So it's better to waste a little chemicals than it is to waste a lot of paper because paper is expensive.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in your dark room, what kind of music are you listening to?
Now I have Spotify in there, and I have my Sonos thing, so I can play whatever music. I mean, I grew up in the '60s and '70s, so I'm not big up on contemporary music so much. So I usually put things on that I'm very familiar with, that I know, and people could have, you could find me dancing in there sometimes, I'm sure, but I'm by myself.
Oh, I totally relate. We're about the same age. I'm 61. So, we're from the same generation. So, yeah.
And I'm grateful to be from that generation. I wish I was younger, but the music that we grew up listening to is just, it's never going to happen again. That's my perspective. It's never going to be like that again. So
nobody writes lyrics like they used to, and nobody composes the complexity, it seems like, that they used to.
No, but I think we're going to sound just like two old men sitting here saying that. So,
well, I'll be old with you, man.
And I would jump on that bandwagon too, because I definitely relate to all that music. I want to talk about another series, and this does not involve. This is more abstract even, and did not involve actual like taking a photograph. It's all done in the darkroom, and that's your variations series. Talk a little bit about that and how that all came about.
The variations. That was a subsequent group of work after I mentioned the lith printing, and lith printing was my first introduction to the way chemicals react with paper.
Is that timelines? Is that the lith papers?
That's timelines. Yeah.
Okay.
And how you can get different colors from black and white photographs. I mean, that's black and white emulsions. And some of them I have used toners, but a lot of them I have not. And I was just, after how many years taking pictures and printing, I was clueless about this until I came upon it. And I wanted to do a subsequent group of work that dealt with that. And I happened upon a Scientific American magazine that described chemograms. And I just started experimenting with that, which leads to the variations. And that is so intriguing because it's dealing with you have two parts. You have a stabilizer, you have an activator, and you're working with developers, and it's the combination of how you apply them to the paper and then the use of light on that photographic paper that gives the tonalities and the colors. And it's just an incredible process. And started off small. I always start with 8x10s and then just get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And to pieces that are the size of the one that's you can see behind me on my left here.
They're so stunning. And as far as abstract work is concerned, this is some of my favorite work that I've seen, hands down. And, no smoke. I love how you presented these with the different colored panels too. Mm-hmm. That's how you present them when you exhibited them.
They've never been exhibited.
Really?
These have never been exhibited?
No.
Oh my God.
Guys, you have no idea how many groups of work I've done that I don't have any representation. I don't have a gallery, and I'm not actively looking for one. I would like one day for one to be very interested in me and my work and want to show all of this. But so many groups of work I have, on the side that have never been exhibited. But so no, these have never been exhibited.
Wow. This is important work, Edward.
Yeah.
The earlier group of the variations that you had up earlier, those were exhibited. Those were exhibited in 2011.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm flabbergasted. I really am. Because I would have expected that you would have done at least a couple, 3 exhibitions with these and then been shown, somewhere halfway across the world or what have you. But I mean, they're just so amazing. It gives me chills just looking at them.
Thank you. No, I'm sure one day they will, when the stars align correctly.
Yeah.
But, these were done in 2013, as you can see there. And the previous group was completed in 2011. And that was very sort of spontaneous. And as much control as I did, I wanted to have more control. So what I decided to do is to do these types on 16x20 paper. And then what I did is I scanned them. And then I did some with just lines and I scanned those. And then I was able to, now we're getting into digital here. So now we're getting into being able to layer one piece onto the next. So I would have a little bit more control. So those 2013 variations are pigment prints.
Okay.
These are not. These are gel and silver prints.
These are just absolutely stunning. And if you want to our listeners that are out there, you can find some YouTube videos. The B&H one, I know for sure, has Edward working in the dark room with an assistant of some sort, somebody. Mm-hmm. And you're doing, you're working with these chemicals, making, drawing with them, mark making, just like you would if you were actually painting on a canvas, essentially. But you're using different materials.
He's using different materials. I would love that video to be seen. So I'm glad to hear that that's on that B&H. They have a link to that?
Yeah, if you just go to YouTube and punch in your name, Edward Mapplethorpe, it'll be like one of the top 3 videos that comes up, I think. Yeah.
And we can put a link on our site, I think, to it, can't we, Todd?
Yeah. When we post this, I'll put that in the episode notes so people can kind of hear you speak more about, your different series and see some of the process. I just think these are stunning.
Are definitely more like paintings. And that's, I met Michelle, my wife, and she started as an intern at the painting and sculpture department at the Museum of Modern Art. And that's where she was when I met her. She's gone on to have a great career as a curator and now director of the museum. But she is the one that I credit bringing me to the museums and looking at paintings and other mediums. So I started not looking at photographs as much as I used to. And I started looking at conceptual work and minimal work and all of that bit. And then I was like wanting to incorporate that into what I knew in the darkroom. So that's what these are not really photographs. I mean, to me, they're not photographs, but they're on photographic paper.
Right.
And the zone system, and the cube, those are just conceptual ideas that, based on Ansel Adams, that I thought were beautiful. So,
well, let's talk about. You want to talk about cube or time zones?
Time zones.
Okay, let's do that.
I mean, anybody who's a student of photography, I would hope that they're aware of the zone system and Ansel Adams' concept of exposure and development. When I was in college, one semester, we had a visiting professor. His name is Joseph Salsa, and he was sort of an expert, or he'd written a book on the zone system. And for those of you who do not know what that is, it's a method of exposure and processing that was made popular, I guess, by Ansel Adams. I mean, he, I guess, is one of the people credited with the development of it, but there were several artists or photographers back in the day. But the idea was to ideally pre-visualize, and then with exposure and with development, basically get a perfect negative that required no burning and dodging. Now, in order to do that, you had to go through a process of getting your middle gray, which is zone 5, and getting your subsequent paper-based white to your blackest black. And that process of doing that with Joseph Salsa was so intriguing to me that was the more interesting aspect to it than the application. Because if you're shooting sheet film, if shooting 4x5 or 8x10, it certainly makes a lot of sense, and I get it, but it's not something I ever applied. But I always remembered this process of getting all the different tones or zones, and there's different theories. I think Ansel Adams had either 10 or 11 zones. Joseph Salsa, he taught us on 35 millimeters, so practically it was the 9-zone system that we learned. So lo and behold, I came up with this concept of making that my project. And I wanted to do very large gelatin silver prints of all the actual zones. So did my research, started working on it. And lo and behold, I tracked down my professor who taught me this. And he had fallen on hard times and wasn't really involved in photography. So it was very rewarding for me because I got him back into the darkroom and had him sort of assist me and guide me in the right direction. But it was a matter of shooting 8x10 film and having that film represent the zones. And we made 50x60 gelatin silver prints of this. And it was exhibited only once in Italy, Rome, Italy. I think Rome, Italy. And if you go into the about section, in my website, you go into the About sections and scroll down, pretty far down, I would say, you'll see the installation. Maybe it's the last thing.
Probably.
There
is.
it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
That's crazy. I love it.
So, I mean, here was just picking up Ansel Adams' book and my professor's book and realizing that that could be a whole subject and conceptual minimalist piece installation. So I was very, very proud. I'm very proud of that work. And I did 2 editions. So I have one that could be broken up in case somebody really wanted to love that Zone 5 and wanted to own it. But I have one that will remain intact as an installation. But that is purely based on the process of photography. So, I mean, they're solid blocks of grayscale.
I love that.
I love how you took this concept or this idea method in photography and made it this abstract work or body of work.
Mm-hmm.
I totally geek out on it as a photographer and somebody that, it was right before I went to school, right before digital really started to take off. So, I was shooting film. I was working with photographers early on that shot film. And, I remember sitting in my first computer class going, what the hell am I doing in this class? Like, I'm never going to do anything on the computer. Why am I here?
Uh-huh.
So this is very reminiscent of Malevich did Black Square, and they also did White Square.
Rauschenberg did white paintings. I mean, there's based on other historical artists. But one thing I really dedicate this to Joseph Salsa because I had lunch with him just before I was going to Italy to exhibit this, and he was so eager to find out the reception and hear people's reactions, and he was very proud of me, and he was just, I got to say, so happy to have been back and smell the chemicals of a darkroom once again. So I felt very happy about giving that to him. And I came back and lo and behold, he had been suffering he had had a cancer bout, but long story short is he passed away. So I never got to see him and I never got to explain to him how grateful I was and how warmly this was received. And so it was sad. So I definitely dedicate this to him.
Yeah.
I just love that you had this professor that you respected and that you enjoyed in school, and you involved him in the process, and have this body of work and dedicate it to him. I think that's really lovely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know whether it would have been. I was struggling with it until he sort of came in the picture and sort of helped, because printing monochromatic photographs is not an easy task. It's not an easy task. So it had its own inherent problems in the whole printing process, because just think about it. It's just like it's hard to get an even surface, But this group of work really made me appreciate that Ansel Adams more so, and being more trained in exposure and development in the darkroom and stuff like that. I started delving more into his processes, and that subsequently led into the Cube group of work,
which I love. And I didn't initially get it until I saw that video, that B&H video. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so brilliant. Like, I can't imagine how hard this series was to facilitate lighting wise, because it's an actual cube that you're photographing and then lighting it in such a way that you get these various tones, these zones.
The camera angle, nothing changes except for the lighting, except the background. We did have to change the background to white at some point. but he has it all mapped out. And this is just an exercise in learning how to light subjects. And I came upon it in the book, and I was just like, oh my God, that is so beautiful. And I'm just going to make this exercise my next group of work. And a friend of mine who's brilliant at lighting, he said, yeah, I'm on board. I would like to help you with this. And, we just forged on, and this was done digitally. I have to be honest with you. This was done digitally. And the reason being is that I didn't want the stand that the cube is on to be in the photograph. So I called my professor, Michael Edelson. This is a different professor. And I said, and who did know Ansel Adams? Did not well, but he knew him, and he was of that generation. And I said, Michael, I'm struggling with this. And he said, Edward, he's like, do you just do it digitally? He's like, if that tool was available when Ansel Adams was alive, do you think Ansel wouldn't have utilized it? And once I got Michael Edelson's blessing to sort of look at it that way, I was like, okay, so that's how we did it. But that didn't make it any easier.
I was going to say, this is crazy. You're a crazy man for taking this on in some ways, like trying to figure all this out. I have a huge appreciation for what you accomplished with this series.
I have the cube downstairs. It's in a crate and it's beautifully built. I had my framer who's retired now, but I told him what my idea, and he's like, I'll make that for you. So it had to be the smoothest, cleanest surface. I mean, the back of it, because you're only seeing three sides, correct?
Yeah.
Right.
So it doesn't have the back of it is sort of open, and it's got a brace that I was able to clamp and suspend it so that I could photograph it. But just taking those meter readings and and I got to say, the website does a pretty good job of the delineation between that right gray and the background gray.
Yeah, it does.
It has to be there. And there's some that are black, but there's the details in the black. It all had to do with getting those details and getting that separation, and zone 1 or zone 9, zone 3, whatever its zones it was that, he spelled out is what we did. And then we had fun with it. And then we just did our own. So sometimes it's just the top light. I think these are pretty much Ansel's five or six. I don't know how many are there. Yeah. But then we abstracted it and just did lit the top and one side or something like that. And those are interesting to see. So this is a large body of work, actually.
It's so amazing.
Have these been exhibited at all?
These were exhibited in where were they exhibited? Berlin. Yes.
All right. Good.
Yes.
And need to be, thank God for Europeans, huh?
Yeah.
Rome and Berlin. No, these are tremendous. And I can't even, this would make me crazy to try to reproduce, So kudos to you, because it had to been just like pulling your hair out at times.
It was not easy. None of these things are easy. I mean, if they're easy, then they're probably not.
Then everybody would do it, right?
Huh?
This is monumental work.
But you know what? Maybe I'm speaking to two people that understand the process of photography. I don't know. I mean, I do it for myself, like any group of work, and I just hope other people appreciate it. But to somebody that doesn't know photography, this might just look like a box. Like, oh, big deal. Like the zone systems pictures. It's like, wow, it's gray. It's gray. It's beautiful. Like people don't. I don't know whether necessarily that means somebody should appreciate it, but you have to do what intrigues you, and then if it intrigues you, then hopefully
it intrigues other people. It'll always resonate with somebody. You just got to get it in the get the right eyes on it. I think if you're a photographer that knows anything about film photography and the zone system, I I think you have an appreciation for it just for the technical aspect of it, but they stand alone as this, this abstract work that is, in my estimation, just mesmerizing. Yeah, I love it. I can't say enough about it. I would have loved to have seen this exhibition in person, and if you have one in the future, I definitely.
I'll send you a link I'll send you some installation photographs.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Turns out you wait until you see the gallery it was exhibited in, because the floor of the gallery had gray and white tiles and black tiles. So it all just sort of like, it was like the space.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
I think
maybe even that B&H video has.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, some of that footage of the actual gallery with the tiles that you're talking about. And then you actually presented the cube that you photographed as part of the installation in that exhibit, right?
I did, and I thought that was important. I don't have it. I wanted to put it in installation in here, but my wife has pushed back on that one. But I thought it was important for people to see the actual cube.
Yeah.
I don't know why. And that was part of the exhibition. Yes. So
I think, I think you're right.
You could just do this digitally. You could just do this on a program. I don't know the program, but people do this to mark up, like, I don't know, interiors and stuff like this. Like called CAD drawing or CAD something.
Yeah, like a CAD program.
Yeah. I mean, you can just do this quite simply with Photoshop, I guess.
Sure.
But the fact that you actually photographed this cube and lit it, the thought behind it is just, to me, is mind blowing.
Thank you.
And when I was chuckling earlier, I was laughing with you, not at you, as far as your wife pushing back, as far as bringing the cube inside the house and displaying it for other visitors to see.
Well, it's in the house. It's in a crate, and it will remain there until it's needed again. But thank you. I love this group of work too. I do. I'm very proud of it.
As you should be. Yeah.
So when you had this exhibition, did you show the work to a number of galleries or curators, or did somebody know about it and reach out to you and say, "Hey"?
The gallery in Berlin had been talking to me about doing an exhibition for quite a while, and I told them, I said, I want to do a new body of work, and so deadlines are good. I mean, I knew that I had something coming up, and I knew that I wanted to do something different. So that encouraged me to quickly get the whole process of this going and start experimenting with it. And so I fed them from time to time my idea, and they loved the idea. And the whole show is called Process. And I don't think it's on my website, but I did it's called the Enlarger. And what I did is I photographed an enlarger. It was a horizontal enlarger that makes big prints. And then I processed that film, and then I put the film in the enlarger. So I had the enlarger print a picture of itself. And then I documented this whole process. So I'll send you a link to that too. But in fact, I reversed the film so that the enlarger was printing its mirror image. So I love that idea. And I did one called The Camera too. I'll have to show it to you, but it's not on my website, but that was part of the show as well.
It's amazing work, Edward. I just love your mind and how and how this progression has gone. It's just so cool because the way you kind of map it out, you can see what years you're doing different things, and I love it.
Photography, it's a great medium, and the process, it's like, I don't know, I'm just all about that process and about exposure, and it's not so much picture taking. I love taking pictures of the 1-year-olds, but I'm not out there photographing using the camera too much anymore. It's all just a conceptual idea that I just need to sort of get out there. And that's why this grain thing, I'm like, I don't know where it's going to go. It may not go anywhere. And I'm okay with that. No, I'm not. I'll take that back to make sure it goes somewhere.
Yeah.
But, and then I read about reticulation, and reticulation is working with chemicals at different temperatures and what happens to the emulsion. And I'm like, you know what? I can make the reticulation process something that most people avoid. Reticulation is not something that you want. But I was like, why not? That could be beautiful.
With any of these bodies of work, especially the stuff that really hasn't been seen before or only been shown once, are you pretty particular about where it goes and how it would be displayed as far as like exhibition space and that sort of thing?
I don't have anybody knocking on my door, so I'm not that concerned about it right now. I mean, I'm only going to be 63, so I'm not old, but I'm certainly concerned about my legacy, and I'm waiting for the day to maybe somebody curate a show of my work and my brother's work. And I even have my father's photographs, and I think that would be a beautiful family sort of exhibition. Yes, I'm certainly concerned and about the installation and things like that. But until somebody really gets interested in exhibiting the work, all I can do is just keep creating it.
What do you want your legacy to be, as far as how do you want it to be portrayed? If you could just pick it, and like somebody said, what do you want? This is going to be your legacy. How do you want it displayed?
I have to say, nobody's ever asked me that question. It's a very good question, Wes. I think I would like my legacy to be that I took something that was almost handed to me and made it my own. And I've had so many reasons to quit photography, or I really did. I mean, the relationship with my brother and having that has had its advantages in some respects, but in the end, it's a big shadow cast over me. So there are many other areas that I could have gone in and had a much simpler life. But I think my legacy should be exemplary of somebody was persevered and took what he had learned and progressed from it and moved on from it. And I hope I could be that example to my son. Don't give up. Don't give up, because there's so many reasons to give up on any any passion or dream. We were talking about dreams earlier. Like, it's easy to give up on a dream, but if you don't, it's very rewarding. Very rewarding.
You did the one book on the babies, one Sons and Daughters. Have you thought about doing another book that is kind of, a selection of all your different series, bodies of work? I mean, I have photo books sitting in my studio here.
I would love to. I mean, I sometimes scratch my head, like, I don't understand. Like, when I did the one book, CBS Sunday Morning did a profile on me. I had the windows of Bergdorf Goodman in Manhattan, did all my baby photographs. I've had so much good press over the years, but I don't have anybody very interested in showing my work. So I'm a little perplexed by that.
I am as well.
Yeah.
I really...
Nobody's like a publisher. I would love a publisher to call me and say, you want to do another book? I believe that it will happen one day, and it will happen when it's supposed to happen. And we were talking about social media earlier. Maybe it could happen faster if I was better with that. But maybe somebody will hear this podcast and be inspired.
I hope so. I really do. And just like a lot of things with new technology in the digital age, when I go to a bookstore these days, the photo section, which used to be massive at one point, has really shrunk down. And I don't know if people just don't, maybe I'm just old, but people just I guess they don't buy photo books as much as they used to, or I'm not sure what the deal is, but it perplexes me, because I used to enjoy going into a bookstore, or we had this beautiful gallery, Camera Obscura Gallery, and Hal Gould had a library upstairs outside of where he exhibited prints and work and could talk with collectors, and he had every photo book you can imagine would be in that library, and there's just nothing like that anymore. It really just again perplexes me.
Yeah, the magazine, the printed image, the mat, like, I'm sure they're not, because imagery is so accessible to everybody these days but yeah, having a book is a really special thing, and I was very proud to do that one book, and but I certainly would like a retrospective type book, because I'm grateful for the two of you for allowing me to talk about these different groups of work, but only when you see them can you really understand the progression from one group to the next to the next. It tells a story, and until there's some sort of exhibition or book like you mentioned, I guess I just rely on my website, I guess. But I mean, the website's got a lot of information, that's for sure, and it's got a lot of imagery, but I'm waiting. I mean, I'm waiting to be asked to curate one of my brother's shows. I would be happy to do that. They've had many different people curate my brother's shows.
There was one more series that I wanted to talk about, and I thought these were just really well done and just interesting.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about these photogravures. Is that how you pronounce the name?
These two are photogravures. Oh, I know. These are the prints that I did with Columbia University. But you on my website, there's a group of this series. Again, I just had this eureka moment of thinking about silly putty. And I was like, you know what? And lifting images as a kid off the comic pages. And I was like, you know what? That could be interesting. So I just acquired through eBay or however I did it, a bunch of Screw magazines. And I just started just lifting the images off and working them. And then I put them on a blackboard and I photographed them. So I just love the idea of this silly putty, which is a childlike sort of toy that we all sort of had as kids, and working with hardcore sort of pornographic images with it. It's the juxtaposition of the material with the subject matter. I don't know. I did a series and then I left it, and then I did a whole nother series. So there's over 100 of those. Yeah. And then I was invited to do, those are lithographs. And I was invited to do a series of lithographs with Columbia University. I don't think they sold one.
Really?
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh. They're amazing. So. Like the whole again, the concept and idea of what you did is just extraordinary. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's out of this world.
I love that series too. Yeah. Never been exhibited.
Wow.
So if you're out there listening to this podcast and you're a curator or you're a publisher, get on the stick. Edward has all this work that needs to be seen by the public, either in book form, exhibition form, both ideally. I would love to see that come to fruition.
Me too. This stuff is so important. I can't say it enough, Edward. This stuff needs to be seen.
Thank you. Well, you're doing your part to help me get it to be seen, and I really appreciate you reaching out to me, and I appreciate this conversation. And I know when I'm speaking to people that do appreciate the work, I feel from both of you that this has been a genuine conversation, and I appreciate that. I do, really do, because I do what I do, and just it's people like you that makes it all worthwhile. So I appreciate doing this podcast.
Thank you. And I just have to say, when I first became aware of you and then seeing your work, I was blown away. And then having the opportunity to spend this time with you and really kind of go over your art journey and then your different bodies of work. I'm just excited for you. And I think something's going to happen. I really do. And your stuff is so important in the whole scheme of things. Thank you so much for allowing us to interview. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. It's been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Same here. And I'm sure this is just, we'll keep in touch, and I look forward to hearing it on the podcast.
All right.
We say it all the time, Edward. Time is the most precious thing that we have. So I second what Wes just said, and I appreciate you carving time out of your Saturday away from your family to speak with us. That means the world to us. And I look forward to hopefully meeting you sometime in the future and in person. I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. Love that too. Thank you, guys.
Again, check out Edward's work at his website, edwardmapplethorpe.com, and find his book One, Sons and Daughters, on Amazon, or better yet, go to your local independent bookstore and order it. For the Tenant Podcast, I'm Todd Pearson.
And I'm Wes Brown.
Have a great week.